go sit down. What do you think, Rabbi?
I think you should stand if you want. If the spirit.
If you're going to stand, you're going to
dance. Stand. I don't either. I'm stopping with you.
Everybody ready? Yes, we're ready. Cross to the sea. Here we go now. Mi Chamochah ba'elim Adonai, Oseh Shalom. Oh, mi Chamochah ba'elim Adonai, Chamochah ledarba kodesh, Norati ilot Oseh Shalom. Mi Chamochah malchutecha ra'u banecha, Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam, Zehiyanu ve'ameru Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Chamochah ba'elim Adonai, mi Chamochah ledarba kodesh, Norati ilot Oseh Shalom. Mi Chamochah ba'elim Adonai, mi Chamochah ledarba kodesh, Norati ilot Oseh Shalom. Mi Chamochah.
Oseh Shalom, Bibroma, Uyaseh Shalom.
because of course we're on Adon Olam, because you can sing Adon Olam to just about anything. We're going to try to prove that now. Adon Olam, Asher Malach. I'm sorry, Adon Olam, Asher Malach. B'terem kol yitzir nivra, le'et nasa v'chefso kol, azay melech shemo nikra, ve'acharei kichlot hakol, levado yimlok nora, ve'hu haya ve'hu hove, ve'hu yeh b'tifara, ve'hu echad ve'ein sheni, le'amshir lo le'achmira, ve'lireishit ve'litachlit, ve'lo ha'od ve'hamizrach, ve'hu eli ve'chayvoti, ve'tzor ve'li ve'ein tzara, ve'hu nisi u'natosi, ve'natosi ve'yom ekra.
Last verse.
Ve'yavo atidruti, ve'elisha ve'ahira, ve'imruti bi'ati, Adonai li ve'lo ira.
Okay, so I'm just gonna talk. It's time for the Minnesota Megillah. If you were here last year, you heard me do some of the Minnesota Megillah. But in honor of all of my Minnesotan relatives who I'm sure will watch the video of this and cry and cringe, but who I will honor nonetheless with this very fake Minnesotan accent. So we're going to get started, and if you are one of the readers, then I'm so glad. And we have a copy of the Megillah up on the bima, so you don't need to bring anything unless you want to. And then if you want to, go ahead. Okay? Okay, Cantor, take it away.
We start with the blessings before the Megillah in an American classic, reminiscent of an American city. Dun, 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 dun.
Minneapolis?
You got it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvot there is a chant for the Megillah, and I thought, just to start us in the spirit of Megillah, I would share a little bit of that chant. Vayhi bimei Achashverosh Hu Achashverosh Hamolech mehot u'vad Kush Sheva ve'esrim u'mea medina Vayamim hahem Keshevet HaMelech Achashverosh Al Kisei Malchuto Asher Beshushan Habira. In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast for all his officials and his servants, the army of Persia and Media. The nobles and officials of the provinces being before him when he displayed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his splendorous majesty. For many days, 180 days, and at the conclusion of these days, the king made for all the people who were present in Shushan, the capital, from the great to the small, a feast for 7 days in the courtyard of the garden of the palace of the king. One more verse.
Keep going.
There were hangings of white fine cotton and blue wool, held with cords of fine linen and purple wool, upon rods of silver and pillars of marble. The couches of gold and silver were on a pavement of variegated marble, red, blue, white, and black.
The wine was flowing over in Shushan, because, you know, he was the king after all, and everything was super, super fancy. And when they were talking about drinking, the only rule was that there were no rules. While all this was going on, there was a queen, you know, Vashti, Queen Vashti. And she was given her own fancy supper. So this went on for like lots and lots of days until the king, well, you know how kings are when they've been drinking for 7 days. And he started acting a little stupid. So he was strutting around like he were Paul Bunyan or something, and he was definitely not Paul Bunyan. Who even is a Paul Bunyan these days anymore? Ladies, am I right? We've been looking for those Paul Bunyans. And the king ordered his buddies to go get Vashti and tell her to leave the clothes behind. And if you know what I'm saying. But Vashti was no pushover. She was sassy. She's got a lot of spine. And she told those guys to get the heck out of her chambers. She told them to tell the king to lay off the alcohol and stop making stupid requests. The king was not happy happy to hear this, shockingly, from Vashti, and started talking to all of his buddies about what he should do with this uppity wife of his.
So what he asked shall be done according to law to Queen Vashti for failing to obey the commandments of the king Ahasuerus conveyed by the eunuchs. Thereupon Memucan declared in the presence of the king and the ministers, Queen Vashti has committed an offense not only against your majesty, but also against all the officials and against all the peoples in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. But the queen's behavior will make all wives despise their husbands as they reflect that King Ahasuerus himself ordered Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come.
Go Vashti.
This very day, the ladies of Persia and Media, who have heard of the queen's behavior, will cite it all your majesty, will cite to all of your majesty's officials, and there will be no end of scorn and provocation. If it please your majesty, let a royal edict be issued by you, and let it be written into the laws of Persia and Media, so that it cannot be abrogated, that Vashti shall never enter the presence of King Ahasuerus, and let your majesty bestow her royal estate upon another who is more worthy than she. Then will the judgment executed by your majesty resound throughout your realm, vast though it is, and all the wives will treat their husbands with respect, high and low alike.
Let's go with the Vashtis. We should have given her, can we give Vashti a clap for standing up for herself? Go Vashti. Okay, take it away.
The proposal was approved by the king and the ministers, and the king did as Memucan proposed. Dispatches were sent to all the provinces of the king, to every province in its own script, and to every nation in its own language, that every man should wield authority in his home and speak the language of his own people.
Are you booing or yay?
Yeah.
Booing, yes. We're on the same page.
Sometime afterward, when the anger of King Ahasuerus subsided, he thought of Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her. The king's servants who attended him said, "Let beautiful young virgins be sought out for your majesty. Let your majesty appoint officers in every province of your realm to assemble all the beautiful young virgins at the fortress Shushan, in the harem under the supervision of Hagan, the king's eunuch, guardian of the women. Let them be provided with their cosmetics."
Ooh. Okay, one more verse before Bruce takes it away. And let the maiden who pleases her majesty be queen instead of the righteous and wonderful Vashti. I may have added something. The proposal pleased the king, and he acted upon it.
And there was a man from Yehuda in the capital of Shushan. Shima Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish Ishimini. And his name was Mordechai, the son of Yair, the son of Shmi, the son of Kish, long name, who was from Yehuda. Asher Hegala Yerushalayim in Ogola, Asher Hegalta in Yakanya Melech. And he was put in gallows from Jerusalem, in the gallows that Yakanya, the king of Yehuda, was exiled. Asher Hegala Nebuchadnezzar Melech Babel. When the king Nebuchadnezzar exiled all the Jews from Babylon. The Omen at Hadassah and Esther, Bas Dodo, Ki Ein La Avedi. And Mordecai was the foster father of Hadassah, who was also called Esther, who was his niece because she didn't have any father or mother. The Hanara Yafator, and the young woman was beautiful, Togas Mara, and lovely, Rubemot, Avia Aima, and with the death of her father and mother, Lakakta Mordecai go to Bala. And Mordecai took her for a daughter to his housewife.
When the king's order and edict was proclaimed, and when many girls were assembled in the fortress Shushan under the supervision of Hegai, Esther too was taken to the king's palace under the supervision of Hegai, guardian of the women. The girl pleased him and won his favor, and he hastened to furnish her with her cosmetics and her rations, as well as with the 7 maids who were her due from the king's palace. And he treated her and her maids with special kindness in the harem. Esther did not reveal her people or her kindred, for Mordecai had told her not to reveal it. Every single day, Mordecai would walk about in front of the court of the harem to learn how Esther was faring and what was happening to her. When each girl's turn came to go to King Ahasuerus at the end of the 12 months treatment prescribed for women, for that was the period spent on beautifying them, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with perfumes and women's cosmetics. And it was after that that the girl would go to the king. Then whatever she asked would be given her to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. She would go in the evening and leave in the morning for a second harem in charge of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch, guardian of the concubines. She would not go again to the king unless the king wanted her, when she would be summoned by name. When the turn came for Esther, daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had adopted her as his own daughter, to go to the king, she did not ask for anything but what Hegai, the king's eunuch, guardian of the women, advised. Yet Esther won the admiration of all who saw her. Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus in his royal palace in the 10th of the month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she won his grace and favor more than all the other virgins. So he set a royal diadem on her head and made her the queen instead of Vashti. The king gave a great banquet for all his officials and courtiers, the banquet of Esther. He proclaimed a remission of taxes for the provinces and distributed gifts as befit the king.
When the virgins were assembled a second time, Mordecai sat in the palace gate. But Esther still did not reveal her kindred or her people, as Mordecai had instructed her. For Esther obeyed Mordecai's bidding, as she had done when she was under his tutelage. At that time, when Mordecai was sitting in the palace gate, Bigthan and Teresh, 2 of the king's eunuchs who guarded the threshold, became angry and plotted to do away with King Ahasuerus. Mordecai learned of it and told it to Queen Esther, and Esther reported it to the king in Mordecai's name. The matter was investigated and found to be so, and the 2 were impaled on stakes.
Yikes.
Yikes, that's right. And this was recorded in the Book of Annals at the instance of the king.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate your coming and supporting me tonight. Hillary for president. I'm going to tell you a little story. Sometime afterward, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman the Agagite. He advanced him and seated him higher than any of his fellow officials. All the king's courtiers in the palace gate knelt and bowed low to Haman. For such was the king's order concerning him, but Mordecai would not kneel or bow low. Yay! Then the king's courtiers who were in the palace gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you obey the king's order? And why can't we unite? Why can't we all unite? The young, the old, the restless." So, anyway, yes, and I just want to thank you all for having me, and now I present you with him.
Hello, hello, hello. I am Bernie Sanders, Senator from Vermont, and I'm here to tell part of this story about a political revolution. When they spoke to him day after day and he would not listen to them, they told Haman, in order to see whether Mordecai's resolve would prevail, for he had explained to them that he was a Jew, much like me, maybe, the jury's still out. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel or bow low to him, Haman was filled with rage, but he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, having been told who Mordecai's people were. Haman wanted to do away with all the Jews, Mordecai's people, throughout the kingdom of Ahasuerus.
So thank you for putting your differences aside to come to this video.
In the first month, that is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, Pur, which means the lot, was cast before Haman. Every day and every month until it fell on the 12th month. That is the month of Adon. Haman then said to the king Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the other peoples in all the provinces of your realm, whose laws are different from them of any other people, and who do not obey the king's laws, and is not in your majesty's interest to tolerate them. If it please your majesty, let an edict be drawn for their destruction, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the stewards for deposit in the royal treasury. Thereupon, the king removed his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman. Gathered the Agagite and foe of the Jews. And the king said, the money and the people are yours to do with as you see fit. On the 13th day of the first month, the king's scribes were summoned, and a decree was issued as Haman to the governors of every province and to the officials of every people, to every province in its own script, and to every people in its own language. The orders were issued in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed with the king's signet. Accordingly, written instructions were dispatched by couriers to all the king's provinces to destroy, massacre, and exterminate the Jews, young and old, children and women, on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month. That is the month of Adar, to plunder their possessions. The text of the document was to the effect that a law should be proclaimed in every single province. It was to be publicly displayed to all the peoples so they might be ready for that day.
The couriers went up post-haste on the royal mission, and the decree was proclaimed in the fortress Shushan. The king and Haman sat down in peace, but the city of Shushan was dumbfounded. When Mordecai learned all that had happened, Mordecai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes. He went through the city, crying out loudly and bitterly, until he came in front of the palace gate, for one could not enter the palace gate wearing sackcloth. Also, in every province that the king's command and decree reached, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing, and everyone lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's maidens and eunuchs came and informed her, the king was greatly agitated. She sent clothing for Mordecai to wear so that he might take off his sackcloth, but he refused.
Thereupon, Esther summoned, oh my, Hathach, one of the eunuchs whom the king had appointed to serve her, and sent him to Mordecai, who learned the why and wherefore of it all. Hathach went out to Mordecai in the city square in front of the palace gate, and Mordecai told him all that had happened to him and all about the money that Haman had offered to pay him in the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Boom. He also gave him the written text of the law that has been proclaimed in Shushan for their destruction. He bade him show it to Esther and inform her and charge her to go to the king and appeal to him and to plead with him for her people. When Hathach came and delivered Mordecai's message to Esther, Esther told him Hathach to take back to Mordecai the following reply. All the king's couriers and all the people of the king's provinces know that if any person, man or woman, enters the king's presence in the inner court without having been summoned, there is but one law for him, that he be put to death. Only if the king extends the golden scepter to him may he live. Now I have not been summoned to visit the king for the last 30 days.
When Mordecai was told what Esther had said, Mordecai had this message delivered to Esther. Do not imagine that you, of all the Jews, will escape with your life by being in the king's palace. On the contrary, if you keep silent in this crisis, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another quarter, while you and your father's house will perish. And who knows, perhaps you have attained to royal position for just such a crisis. Then Esther sent back this answer to Mordecai. Go, assemble all the Jews who live in Shushan and fast in my behalf. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. And I and my maidens will observe the same fast. And then I shall go to the king and know it is contrary to the law. And if I am to perish, I shall perish. So Mordecai went about the city and did just as Esther had commanded him.
On the third day, Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, facing the king's palace, while the king was sitting on his royal throne in the throne room facing the entrance of the palace.
As soon as the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, she won his favor. The king extended to Esther the golden scepter which he had in his hand, and Esther approached and touched the tip of his scepter.
What troubles you, Queen Esther? The queen asked her, and what is your request? Even to half the kingdom shall be granted to you.
If it please your majesty, Esther replied, that your majesty and Haman come today to the feast that I have prepared for him.
The king commanded, tell Haman to hurry and do Esther's bidding. So the king and Haman that Esther had prepared.
At the wine feast, the king asked Esther, what is your wish? It shall be granted you. And what is your request? Even to half the kingdom it shall be fulfilled. My wish, replied Esther, my request. If your majesty will do me the favor, if it please your majesty to grant my wish and accede to my request, let your majesty and Haman come to the feast which I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do your majesty's bidding. That day, Haman went out happy and lighthearted. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the palace gate, and Mordecai did not rise or even stir on his account, Haman was filled with rage at him. Nevertheless, Haman controlled himself and and went home. He sent for his friends and his wife Zeresh. And Haman told them about his great wealth and his many sons, and all about how the king had promoted him and advanced him above the officials in the king's courtiers. What is more, said Haman, Queen Esther gave a feast, and besides the king, she did not have anyone but me, and tomorrow too I am invited by her along with the king. Yet also this means nothing to me every time I see that you and Mordecai sitting in the palace gate.
Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "Let a stake be put up 50 cubits high, and in the morning ask the king to have Mordecai impaled on it. Then you can go gaily with the king to the feast." The proposal pleased Haman. And we have the stake put up. That night sleep deserted the king, and he ordered the book of records, the annals to be brought, and it was read to the king. There it was found written that Mordecai had denounced Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, who guarded the threshold, who had plotted to do away with the king as...
Yep. Oh, that king. Just say the king. We all know that king you're talking about.
What honor or advancement has been conferred on Mordecai for this? The king inquired. Nothing at all has been done for him, replied the king's servants, who were in attendance.
Who is in the court? The king asked. For Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to speak to the king about having Mordecai impaled on the stake he had prepared for him. It is Haman. Standing in the court, the king's servants answered him. "Let him enter," said the king. Haman entered. And the king asked him, "What should be done for a man whom the king desires to honor?" Haman said to himself, "Whom the king desires to honor more than me? So let royal garb which the king has worn be brought, and a horse on which the king has ridden, and whose head a royal diadem has been set. And let the attire of the horse be put in the charge of one of the king's noble courtiers, and let the man whom the king desires to honor be attired and paraded on the horse through the city square, while they proclaim before him, 'This is what is done for the man whom the king desires to honor.'"
Our reading comes from the book of Esther, chapter 6, verse 10, in the King James Version. Then the king said to Haman, "Make haste and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken." Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, "Thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor." And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house, mourning and having his head covered. And Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends, everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh, his wife, unto him, "If Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him." And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, and hasted to bring Haman. queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day of the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and it please the king, let my life be given thee at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we have been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I have held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Here endeth the reading of this lesson.
Thereupon King Ahasuerus demanded of Queen Esther, Who is he and where is he who dared to do this? The adversary and the enemy, replied Esther, is the evil Haman. The king in his fury left the wine feast for the palace garden while Haman remained to plead with Queen Esther for his life, for he saw that the king had resolved to destroy him. When the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet room, Haman was begging Esther, and no sooner did the begging leave Haman's lips than Haman Okay, I think we're almost there. Then Harbona, which is fun to say, Harbona, one of the eunuchs in attendance on the king, no, both it down here. Or a king is standing at Haman's house, giving you a tie. Oh, Haman. I got excited when I was back. The man who, which Haman made for Mordecai, the man who saved the king. And then the king said, impale him on that stake. And that's what happened. But then we had a special message from Haman. From Haman.
You say, because all I wanted was simply to kill all the Jews. It's okay. I'm gonna be hanged on the gallows in Shushan today. Why so mad? Remember I had the king's power to do and abuse. Remember, despite being evil, I could have been worse. I'll be back, wait and see. Every poem you'll remember me. I'll be back, I foresee that your name will cookie after me. Wrong, you can dance. You should have killed me when you had the chance. And I wasn't half as bad as others who will come your way. Ha 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 ha. You say the Jews won't bow to any father. I'd like to make that happen, but I have to say bye. And no, don't change the story. I'm not an allegory. This will be pretty gory. I'm going out in glory forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. I'll be back. Wait and see. Every poem you'll remember. foresee that you'll name a cookie after me. You can grub, you can dance. Should've killed you when I had the chance, but at least I can say I'm not spending the rest of my time singing in a sold-out Broadway play.
Gave the property of Haman to Queen Esther. Mordecai presented himself to the king, for Esther had revealed how he was related to her. The king slipped off his ring, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai, and Esther put Mordecai in charge of Haman. Esther spoke to the king again, falling at his feet and weeping, and beseeching him to avert the evil plotted by Haman against the Jews. The king extended the golden scepter to Esther, and Esther arose and stood before the king. If it please you, your majesty, she said, and if I have won your favor, and the proposal seems right to your majesty, and if I am pleasing to you, let dispatches be written countermanding those which were written by Haman, confiding his plot to annihilate the Jews throughout the king's provinces. For how can I bear to see the disaster which will befall my people, and how can I bear to see the destruction of my kindred?
Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and Bernie, Mordecai the Jew, I have given Haman property to Esther, and he has been impaled on the stake for scheming against the Jews. And you may further write with regard to the Jews as you see fit. Write it in the king's name and seal it with the king's signet, for an edict that has been written in the king's name and sealed with the king's signet may not be revoked. So the king's scribes were summoned at the time on the 23rd day of the 3rd month, that is the month of Sivan, and letters were written at Mordecai's dictation to the Jews and to the satraps, the governors and the officials of the 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia, to every province in its own script, and to every people in its own language, and to the Jews in their own script and language. It was huge. He had them written in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed with the king's signet. Letters were dispatched by mounted couriers, riding steeds used in the king's service, bred of the royal stud. To this effect, the king has permitted the Jews of every city to assemble and fight for their lives. If any people or province attacks them, they may destroy, massacre, and exterminate its armed force together with women and children, and plunder their possessions.
Yikes.
On a single day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely on the 13th day of the 12th month, that is, the month of Adar.
Thank you! The text of the document was to be issued as a law in every single province. It was to be publicly displayed to all the people so that the Jews should be ready for the day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers mounted on royal steeds went out in urgent haste at the king's command, and the decree was proclaimed in the fortress of Shushan. Mordecai left the king's presence in royal robes of blue and white, with a magnificent crown of gold and a mantle of fine linen and purple wool. It was super fancy. Fancy. I lost the accent midway through fancy. Fancy? Super fancy. Here we go. And the city of Shushan rang with joyous cries. Thank you. The Jews enjoyed life and gladness, happiness and honor. Let me just real quick make sure I didn't go over my spot. One more verse. And in every province and in every city, when the king's command and decree arrived, there was gladness and joy among the Jews, a feast and a holiday. And many of the people of the land professed to be Jews, for the fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. Okay, Curtis family, take it away. That's a great place to end. The fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. Okay, Kiki.
Hi, y'all. I'm just visiting from down south, and that nice rabbi of yours from Minnesota, she asked me to have a little talk with you, so I thought I'd just read a few words.
Oh, bless her heart.
And so, on the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, when the king's command and decree were to be executed, the very day on which the enemies of the Jews had expected to get them in their power, the opposite happened, and the Jews got the enemy in their power. Throughout the provinces of King Ahasuerus, the Jews mustered in their cities to attack them, those who sought their hurt, and no one could withstand them, for the fear of them had fallen upon their peoples.
Lord Almighty. Getting good now, guys.
Indeed. All the officials of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and the king's stewards, showed deference to the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai had fallen upon them. For Mordecai was now powerful in the royal palace, and his fame was spreading throughout all the provinces. The man Mordecai was growing ever more powerful. In the fort, no, not there. So the Jews struck at their enemies with the sword, slaying and destroying. They wreaked their will upon their enemies. In the fortress Shushan, the Jews killed a total of 500 men.
Yikes.
They also killed, listen to these funny names, they killed Parshandatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Poratha, Adelia, and Datha, Parmashta, Andesai, Aridai, and Lysantha. And you know who they were? Those were the 10 sons of Haman. But they did not lay hands on the spoil.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you so much. David? It was like I was home again, listening to that accent.
Merci.
Oh, Lord. Okay, I'm going to go sit down and see what happens.
When the number of those slain in the fortress Shushan was reported in the same day to the king said to the Marquess Esther, in the fortress Shushan alone, the Jews have killed a total of 500 men, as well as the 10 sons of Haman. What then must be done in the provinces of Zidam? What Jewish map should we learn to do? And what else is there left to be fulfilled? If it please your majesty, Esther replied, let the Jews in Shushan be permitted to act among the dead, and let Haman's 10 sons. Do I think we have already slain? Let them be impaled on stake. The king ordered that this should be done, and the decree was proclaimed in Shushan. All 10 sons were impaled. And the Jews in Shushan mustered again on the 14th day of Adar, and slew 300 more men in Shushan. But they did not lay hands on the spoil. The rest of the Jews, those in the king's provinces, likewise mustered and fought for their wars. The spoils of the enemies killing 75,000 of their foes. They did not lay their hands on the spoil. That was on the 13th day of the month of Adar. And they rested on the 14th day and made it a day of feasting and merrymaking. But the Jews in Shushan mustered on both the 13th and 14th days, and 15th day, and 16th day. But they rested again and made it a day of feasting and merrymaking.
Oh, thank you. That was just wonderful. Mordecai made sure to write down all the stuff that happened in Shushan and told all his people to observe this day as a holiday that would be celebrated by dressing up in fancy clothes and costumes every single year. Everybody should party like the twins had done something good for once, or even like the Vikings may have won something or other. Not the Leif Erikson kind of Vikings, I'm talking about the football kind. And basically, all I can tell you about them is that they play football, but we hope they do well. Because on each year, the Jews are supposed to remember that even though the super bad guy, Haman, plotted against them, our beautiful and brilliant queen, who was super smart and super brave, and shouldn't only be remembered as being pretty, although good for her, has saved the Jews of Shushan. Okay, hold on, Cantor. Right here.
For that reason, these days were named Purim, after Purim. In view then of all the instructions in the said letter, and of what they had experienced in that matter, and what had befallen them, the Jews undertook and irrevocably obligated themselves and their descendants, and all who might join them, to observe these 2 days in the manner prescribed, and at the proper time each year. Consequently, these days are recalled and observed in every generation, by every family, every province, and every city. And these days of Purim shall never cease among the Jews, and the memory of them shall never perish among their descendants. Then Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, wrote a second letter of Purim, for the purpose of confirming with full authority the aforementioned one.
I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing at something else that happened the other day.
Of Mordecai the Jew. Dispatches were sent to all the Jews in the 127 provinces of the realm of Ahasuerus with an ordinance of equity and honesty.
Sorry. It's so good. It's so good.
These days of Purim shall be observed at their proper time, as Mordecai the Jew and now Queen Esther had obligated them to do, and just as they had assumed for themselves and their descendants the obligation of the fast with their lamentations.
So I'm with you.
You are not lamentationing.
No.
And Esther's ordinance validating these observances of Purim was recorded in a scroll. King Ahasuerus imposed tribute on the mainland and the islands. All his mighty and powerful acts and a full account of the greatness to which the king advanced Mordecai are recorded in the annals of the kings of Media and Persia. Unfortunately, a book we've never found.
Spoilers!
For Mordecai the Jew ranked next to King Ahasuerus and was highly regarded by the Jews and popular with the multitude of his brethren. He sought the good of his people and interceded for the welfare of all his kindred.
This man deserves an Oscar.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, harav et ribeinu, v'hatan et dineinu, v'hanifra lanu mitzareinu. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'moshiach.
Haman from Mordecai.
Yes, that's what I was saying.
I think.
Yeah.
I want to do it with a book.
That's a lot of demands from you, Cantor.
It's not the Purim kind of funny if Cantor doesn't.
Whoa.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher tishar b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, b'shabbat kodsho b'ahavah u'ratzon hintilanu, zikaron l'maaseh b'reishit, ihu yom techila l'mikra kodesh, zecher yitziat mitzrayim, ki banu laka ve'ochanu hilata mikol ha'amim ve'shavat kodshecha ve'ahava u'ratzon inchaltanu baruch atah Adonai mekadesh
L'chaim. No, it's cold season.
Oh, but this is okay. This kills the germs.
Yeah. Sounds like medicine to me. Okay, here we go. Baruch Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Happy Purim. Come and join us in the hall and celebrate some more. Oh, and one more announcement. If you liked the story of Purim and you want to talk about it more, you can come tomorrow morning at 9:30 for our special Megillah Esther Torah study, where we'll be talking about all the fun and slightly surprising elements of the book of Esther. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
It's sackcloth.